Holy guacamole, Riot decided to throw every agent in a blender and really shake up this meta. They hit just about every agent, some harder than others, and to top it all off, they're adding a new map, plus Split is coming back. This makes for one interesting smoothie. Like, the meta is going to be a lot different than what we're used to. So with these changes comes another tier list video, and this one is really going to knock your socks off. But before we talk about all the changes, if you want to stay up to date on any meta that Riot throws at us, you should check us out at SkillCapped. We have agent-specific courses created by Radiant One Tricks, map guides, even for Split, and a ton more value for any level player. Or we could even set up a VOD review for any of you higher skilled players. So stop wasting RR and come over to our website. It's our job to help you improve. So we're going to start at the bottom with the D tier. My poor boy Harbor is in here all by himself. You really hate to see this, as he's Riot's newest agent, but in this upcoming patch, all they did was buff the duration of his high tide and his cascade. His issue though isn't really addressed. He has no stopping power, the other controllers generally get more value from him, and he's kinda one-dimensional. And spoiler alert, they did nerf Viper's ultimate and give Omen a small buff, but these changes don't really affect Harbor like a chamber nerf would affect Cipher, if that makes sense. In all honesty though, I don't think Harbor is unplayable as people make him out to be, and with the duration of his smokes going up, his win percentage should go up as well. Now let's move on to the C tier, and to start it off, we're going to talk about Astra. Don't get me wrong, her global presence is insane, and she can get crazy value if you have cooperative teammates. But that's the issue, cooperative teammates. Pro teams still run a lot of Astra, but it's because they're coordinated, and unfortunately in ranked, it's going to be a lot harder to get that same value out of her if none of your team is working together. But if you can squeeze some communication out of your teammates, I think that Astra could definitely be a really strong pick. Next in the C tier is Yoru. Listen, I love some big brain outplays as much as the next guy, but just like Astra, Yoru needs a more coordinated team environment in order for him to work. This is why pro teams still run him, but a lot of ranked players think he's a troll pick. On the other hand though, his gate crash's cost got reduced by 50 credits, so that's something, but their health got nerfed a little bit. You just need a lot of setup for him to work really well. Asking teammates for certain things, if you're on a nasty flank with your gate crash, you need them to not die, you get my point. Teammates suck. So while Yoru is great in a coordinated environment, I still think players are going to struggle to squeeze value out of him in ranked. And next in our C tier is Neon. The only reason why I think she belongs in here is because the skill ceiling to use her is extremely high. You need to make sure your movement is on point. Your really bolts don't screw over your teammates, and her fast lane can benefit the enemy if you don't use it right, and her ultimate requires some good tracking. The amount of playing time you need to put in with her is high, but if you put in the effort to pick her up, you'll definitely reap the rewards in your win column. Now the last agent in C tier is Brimstone. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with Brimstone, it's just that the other controllers are a lot better. Brim only has 3 Skye smokes, his molly isn't that flexible, and one of his best maps is being rotated out of the meta in Bind. Literally every other controller has more smokes than Brimstone. This makes defaulting a lot harder than it would be with other agents. Brimstone's best map is now Fracture, but this is also Harbor's best map, and a lot of pro teams are even opting for Omen on this map as well. So while Brim isn't bad, it's just that the other controllers have a lot more flexibility. So now with the 2 bottom tiers out of our way, let's focus on the B tier, starting with Phoenix. And this is the first agent where I think Phoenix got buffed indirectly by the changes to some other agents. So again, spoiler alert, but a lot of agents got their ultimates nerfed from 7 ultimate points up to 8. This changes things a lot, as other agents are going to have to think a lot harder when it comes to when they should pop their ultimate. It's really valuable. And Phoenix, on the other hand, I think now has the strongest ultimate in the game. His run it back being at only 6 ultimate points allows him to use it almost whenever he wants. This ability creates a crazy amount of space for your team, and I think with these ultimate nerfs, we're going to see a lot more Phoenix. And also a side note, his Blaze, otherwise known as his Flame Wall, got cheaper by 50 credits, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's still a buff. And the next in our B tier is Cipher. I've mentioned this briefly in some of our other guides, but the biggest Cipher buff is going to be a chamber nerf. But not only do they nerf chamber, they also nerf the health of a lot of abilities like Fade's Prowlers and Raise's Boombot. This makes Cipher tripwires and setups survive that much longer, which was one of his biggest issues. Now that his setups have more survivability due to some nerfs coming to other agents, he definitely has a bigger spot in the meta. And Chamber's trademark got nerfed to where he needs to be in range of it now. This means that Cipher is the only agent that can get global information constantly. And next, let's talk about Fade. And boy, oh boy, do Riot hate these Prowlers. They decided to nerf them again, giving them 60 health. 60 health! You can now classic right-click these things and boop, they're gone. Riot wants abilities like these to be more for information, and that's what they're for now. You can't really fight with these things nearly as well because all they take are 2 rifle shots to break. And keep in mind, the duration got hit not too long ago. So with this nerf, you're going to see other initiators pass Fade up as their abilities are still tankier and your team can get more value out of them. Now next in our B tier is going to be KO. And this placement honestly really kills me. I'm a KO main, and I actually think he's the best agent in the game right now. But the issue comes in that he also requires a bit of coordination from your team, and his kit has a high learning curve. And with the newest patch, his ultimate now went from 7 ultimate orbs to 8. This was the strongest part of his kit. And besides that, people don't know how to react off the information gathered from his knife, and if you want to set your teammates up with a flash, you need to be really careful to not destroy their retinas, and his molly no longer breaks Killjoy's ultimate. If you want to break it, you literally have to have this molly directly in the center of her lockdown. Also, his right-click flash also got hit hard recently, so this takes away some of his playmaking potential for himself. But in the right hands, I do still think that KO is overpowered. So if you combine all of this with his new 8-point ultimate cost, it could definitely be harder for some players to get value out of KO. Now lastly in the B tier, let's talk about Breach. Breach's ultimate got nerfed from 7 orbs to 8 as well, and his Aftershock no longer breaks Killjoy's lockdown. This was a huge benefit to running him on Fracture. If the enemy team picked Killjoy, she couldn't use her ultimate under B-Site and Sewer, but now she can. And he suffers from the same problems that KO does. His utility is all pretty strong, but if you don't have teammates who know how to use it or follow up off it, it's kinda useless. So Breach got nerfed this patch, but with teammates who want to work together, he could still be a nightmare to deal with. Now let's move on to the A tier. And keep in mind, I think that every agent in the game could be run on any map without a problem. These agents that I'm about to talk about are just the easiest to get the most value out of compared to the others. And to start out our list, we're going to talk about Chamber. He used to be our S tier agent for so many lists, but after these upcoming changes, I think Riot finally managed to find some balance in the Sentinel role. And to make things simple, I'm just going to list off his changes because there's a ton. Here's the nerfs to his Rendezvous. Chamber can now teleport to 1 anchor while it's in their range. They increase the weapon equip time after teleporting from 0.4 to 0.7 seconds. Once his TP is destroyed, it will be disabled for the rest of the round. There's no more cooldown. But they removed the TP activation height, and its range got increased from 15 meters to 26 meters. Keep in mind that's its radius, so it's kinda half that. There's also no more additional cooldown after recalling his anchor after TPing. The only nerf to his Headhunter is that the spread now increases drastically after a second shot to stop you from spamming. That's not all, here's the nerfs to his trademarks. The trap is now range restricted like Killjoy. The trap will be disabled while he's out of range. The trap can be recalled mid-round, but there's a 30-second cooldown on the recall. Its health got increased from 1 to 20 health, and the initial startup time got increased from 2 seconds to 4 seconds. And all of his slows from his trademark or ultimate also got nerfed. Its fire rate is reduced by 57.5%, the slow size got reduced by 30%, the slow duration reduced from 6 to 4 seconds, and the slow effect percentage reduced from 50% to 40%. Whew, okay. That was a lot to digest. To sum it up, they essentially nerfed everything in his kit to the ground, but didn't really touch the strongest part of it. Being able to teleport out of any situation by the snap of your fingers is just too strong, and this is why he's still in our A tier. But with these changes, he should be a lot more miserable to play and predictable, but not completely demolish his kit. Now with Chamber out of the way, let's talk about Skye. Her regrowth got 50 credits cheaper, but her Trailblazer got nerfed by 50 credits. This isn't too crazy, but with Fade's nerfs, Skye's kit got way stronger. She gets more info than her heal is nuts, and her ultimate is still 7 orbs compared to everybody else's 8. With the nerfs to other initiators, Skye definitely gets a bump up on our tier list. And next in our A tier is Sova, and he's also getting indirectly buffed just like Skye did. Riot didn't touch him at all this patch, and his drone is still a tank. Compared to Fade's Prowlers, this thing just gets way more information and can go a lot further. So while Fade might be better on close quarters maps, you could make the argument for Sova to be run on every map. His All Drone got a ton stronger compared to the rest of the cast's information abilities. All in all, Sova is back on the menu. Now this next agent might be a surprise to you, but I think Reyna is an A tier agent. Her leers are just crazy strong. She got buffed recently, and she's able to get so much space now with her flash. The speed in which she can follow up off her leer makes it so that anyone challenging them is gonna have a bad time. In the right hands, I do think Reyna could take over a game. I mean, dude, her flashes have more health than Fade's Prowlers now. Keep that in mind. Now let's talk about Omen. He's in the A tier because his kit is just too flexible. He can smoke from across the map, his one-ways on some maps are just insane, he can make plays on his own with his paranoia real easily, and as a matter of fact, his paranoia just got 50 credits cheaper, so pistol rounds aren't clunky anymore. He gets like 5 smokes a round if it goes long enough. There's just nothing bad about his kit, and his ultimate and teleports are just good for playmaking in general. Omen can be played on any map, and he can do it well. I mean, there's just not much to say about him. He's great. Next, let's talk about Sage and how she can now heal teammates all the way back to 100 HP. And I think this is a pretty good buff for Sage. This is almost a free res every round, but this does come at a cost. She can now only heal herself for 30 HP, meaning that Sage is a lot more team-oriented now than before. Her barrier orb also got nerfed, and now takes an extra 0.3 seconds for it to fortify, meaning enemies could break it a lot quicker. I mean, all this really means is that Sage players need to think more when placing their wall down so it doesn't get broken instantly. But again, Sage is an agent that could be played on any map, which does slot her in this A tier. And now next on our list is Raze, and like I mentioned before, she got a pretty big nerf to her boombot. It now only has 60 HP like Fade's Prowler, and to be honest, I don't really think this is that big of a deal. Her boombot was mainly used for information anyways, and once you get that information, your team can respond accordingly. Her satchels also no longer break Killjoy's alarm bot, and that's just a small side note, but despite these nerfs, I think that Raze still has the best duelist kit in the game. She has info, movement, AoE, a strong ultimate. She's just extremely flexible. Do you see a common trend here? Next on our A list comes Killjoy. She's another agent that got buffed because of the other agent nerfs, but her lockdown now has 200 HP. This means that Sova's shock darts and Breach's aftershock doesn't break it. KO's Molly does, but you literally have to be right on top of it. And Sova's ultimate now requires all 3 charges to land on it in order for it to break. Combine this with the fact that her abilities all now have a bit more health, her kit isn't going to get destroyed as easy. Her lockdown is still only 7 orbs. I could see this getting nerfed in the future, but as of now, her ultimate is literally round winning. This patch makes her A tier material for sure. Alright, now it's time for the last agent in our A tier, and this is Jett. And to be honest, nothing's changed about her kit except for the fact that Chamber got nerfed. So you might see teams run Jett instead of Chamber and run Killjoy or Cipher instead. I mean, I've already seen pro teams start picking her to replace Chamber before the nerf. I mean, she's always been a really good agent. All in all, nothing much about Jett has changed, and her spot on the tier list isn't going to change either. Now it's time for our S tier. I saved this tier for agents I believe are just so much better than others in their category that you're just trolling by not picking them. And the only agent in here is Viper. Now, like I said earlier in this video, Riot did a really good job at trying to balance everyone out in this patch. They did nerf Viper's ultimate in that it costs 8 ult orbs, and it falls a lot faster if you move out of it, and if you go back into it, it takes a lot longer for it to recharge. But her ultimate isn't what makes her so strong. She gets so many smokes in a round and so much fuel to play with that she's just too strong not to play. Her stalling potential is crazy, you could run her on any map, she's a pain in the ass to deal with, and people literally moan and groan at the sight of having to play against her. This should mean something. Because she's so good and unreplaceable on some maps, this makes her keep her spot in the S tier despite her ultimate nerf. So that's the end of our tier list. Hopefully by now, I've painted a good picture of where the meta is headed. Bye-bye, Chamber. You were too strong for too long, and I am glad that you're gone. Good riddance. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel down below. It really does help us out. But before you go, please keep in mind that this is all just one of many in-depth guides that we have on our website. Also, if you want a chance at having your VOD reviewed, like I mentioned before, be sure to subscribe on our website at SkillCapped.com. We also have tons of Radiant Smurf commentaries where we have Radiant players walking through exactly how to have the most impact possible in a bunch of different situations in a bunch of different ranks. So what are you waiting for? You got nothing to lose. Head on over to SkillCapped.com and get started in your way to that rank that you deserve. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening, guys. I'm Teets, and we here at SkillCapped want to thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.